Welcome to the National Women's Fitness Academy podcast. We're here to talk about women's health, female hormones, body image, and all things health and fitness.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Women's Fitness Academy podcast. I am one of your hosts, Ellen, a binge and body image expert, as well as an educator for Women's Fitness Academy, as you guys probably know by now if you've listened to a few of the episodes. I literally just said, if we stuff up, we can just edit it out. That the first thing happens, I stuff up. Anyway, it's real. I'm human. You guys are human. I know you appreciate the realness. Today, I have a very exciting coach, someone who is quite similar to me in the way she works, which is one of the reasons why I really want to get her on. I first connected with her because we actually have the same coach. So our mindset business coach is the same. We work with Taylor, and she's absolutely incredible. And she actually told me, she's like, go and look at this girl's stuff because it's really, really good. And I was like, okay. And then I started following her. So I'm super excited for you guys to meet or listen to the beautiful Sarah Sullivan, a health and food freedom coach. Did I say that right?
Yes, exactly. Fitness, nutrition, health coach, but definitely specializing in food freedom these days.
Beautiful. Well, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm actually so excited to do this with you today.
Yeah. So am I. Before we started, I was just telling Sarah, like, obviously I'm in Bali and the traffic today was just been mental. Like, I'm literally still sweating because I was on the bike for so long. But it's just something that happens here, and that's so fun.
I'm so jealous. I'd rather be in Bali traffic than be in Melbourne's cold weather.
Yeah. I've seen a few people who've moved back recently and they've gone from like this crazy like 30, 40 degrees to like 16 degrees in Sydney. I was like, what is going on? It's meant to be like just the start of like autumn.
Summer is gone. It is long gone, especially in Melbourne. It's behind us. It's
So
sad.
depressing. So depressing. Well, for the listeners who don't know you, Sarah, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been coaching, what got you into the industry?
So I have been coaching for about 2 years now, probably a little bit longer than that, but full-time for 2 years now, working within my business. I started my business and I started fitness and nutrition coaching in lockdown. As I said, I'm from Melbourne, so we were locked down for such a long time.
You look them hard.
Yeah, it was horrible. It was hard. It was very hard. But I utilized that time to go back to study, and I became a PT and a nutrition coach at the same time, and launched my Instagram page and started coaching women from there. Like I said, I started in fitness and nutrition, which is where I had a lot of passion. I'd been going to the gym myself since I was like 20 years old, so over 10 years. I'd already been doing flexible dieting and tracking macros for probably the same amount of time. Actually, I had known how to do macros and follow the flexible lifestyle. And I started off, teaching people how to be flexible with their food and resistance training in the gym. And then we've just transitioned last year, about middle of last year, into much more mindset, food freedom, and lifestyle, like health lifestyle, from more as the strict deficit, surplus, building phase, all of those kind of things.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like there's a lot of people who do that transition. Do you notice, like, because in my personal business, I've had a lot of people who have coached for weight loss like years ago, and now they're coming and they're like, hang on, I actually want to learn about how to let go of tracking, how to have like more food freedom, how to not rely on my fitness pal. Like, do you get a lot of those people?
Yeah, absolutely. So, from my own personal journey, I was macro tracking and flexible dieting, and I was really, really great when I was doing the 8-week challenges or doing the 12-week programs and things like that. And I would stick to it to a T. And I was the best. I was winning these challenges. I was determined. No one was ever going to beat me. And I was like, my macros are down to the gram. I'm not missing a step. I'm not missing a gym session. And then it's like, well, surprise, now you've got binge eating disorder. And it's like, when you become so fixated on something and it becomes your whole entire life. And then you've also got the underlying wounding and things like that and all of the trauma, and then you start restricting yourself physically, that's going to come out. And then when I started to, coaching people for fitness and nutrition, and I started having real conversations with these women and getting to know them and getting to know their lifestyles, the women coming to you for fitness and nutrition coaching aren't coming to you with great mindsets. If they did have great mindsets, they'd probably be able to do it on their own, and they'd probably have already succeeded already. And it's like, you get to the point where you can teach them everything there is to know about flexible dieting and macro tracking, but it doesn't really get them their long-term results without doing the food freedom work and the body positivity work and the self-love work and the mindset work. And I just kind of like had a stalemate in my business where I was like, this isn't enough for me. This is, I'm not serving these women the way I want to be. And I also know that I need to become the coach that I needed when I was doing those 8-week challenges, and nobody was paying attention to how I was actually suffering. So yeah, that's definitely where the change came about. And I was getting, like, the more I coached people, they understood flexible dieting, and I got them to understand it. We did really well. And they're like, but now what? And then I know you notice those little things where they're like, oh, but I can't go out to a restaurant. How am I going to track that? And I'm like, whoa, no, you've gone too far. And then you get the messages of being like, oh my God, I've gone over my carbs. And you're like, how much did you go over by? And they're like, 4 grams. And you're like, oh, whoa, like we need to start bringing like putting flexible back in this name, and yeah, working to a much more lifestyle wellness approach.
Yeah, 100%. And guys, I'm laughing, but it's not because it's funny, but because I have been there myself, and also have had clients who've been there. And it's like, when you look back at it now, when we're obviously on the other side, it's like I remember having like a panic attack because I was 3 grams over my carbs or something like.
Like the panic attacks are so real, and like you can laugh about it now, but when you're living it, and I know so many people can relate, like, you like when you make a whole meal and you track it all out and you weigh it all out and you cook it, and then like I have little nieces and nephews and they come over and ask you for a bite and you're like, no, you can't have any of this. Like, you, of course not. You're not allowed to eat my food. Like I've accounted for this, and if you eat some of it, I won't know how much protein I'm under for the day. And like that was my reality for such a long time. It's just like, it's mind blowing to me.
Yeah, no, but it is like, when you look back at it, it's obviously we know so much more now, and like what actual true food freedom is. But I remember thinking, like, when you are so stuck in your tracking and you planning everything out, and then like you are thinking that this is freedom, like this is how I want to live. Like, looking like when I was full on tracking, I never thought it was hard. Like I never thought it was a chore or anything like that. It was just like, no, this is my food, and like you said, no one can have it because it's mine and it's tracked. You guys,
and God forbid that like plan for the day changes. Like no,
exactly,
not at all.
And you just get so stuck in that behavior that you don't realize that it is actually not unhealthy, or not healthy. Sorry. And I don't know about you, but like for me, like I was only hanging out with people who are tracking their food as well.
Yeah, and it brought out such a defensive side in me as well. When people would be like, oh, I thought you were on a diet, or I thought you were trying to lose weight, I would get my back up instantly. And I always found myself defending the process, and I always found myself like getting triggered, basically, which obviously, when we work in mindset, we know where those triggers are coming from now. And it's when people were being like, oh, even my dad would say to me, he'd watch me weigh out my cereal, and he'd see me weigh it out. And then if it went like 3 grams over, he'd see me pick it out and put it back in the box. And he'd be like, are those 3 grams going to make you gain weight? And you'd get like instantly triggered and instantly offended and instantly like, this is how I get to eat all of the food and still be skinny. Like, this is the best thing possible. Like, this is real dieting. Like, everybody else is missing out, kind of thing. Like, I can control my body and I can eat the cereal. And it's like, who are you trying to kid?
No, 100%. And unfortunately, I think there's a lot of coaches who really glorify this behavior. And for me, I was always told like, oh my God, you're so motivated, you have so much motivation, like, oh, you're killing it.
I
Like,
wish I was as disciplined as you.
yeah, exactly. And like the coach that I had was even like, oh my God, like perfect, like you kill every single week, 100% spot on. And obviously, like when you're constantly getting that validation, like of course you're gonna want to keep going. Like you don't want to disappoint your coach.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you know, like when I had a fitness and nutrition coach, part of the check-in process was to do the screenshot of your week in MyFitnessPal, and like you know those little like columns of how perfect you were being, and I was like, mine are going to be even, mine are going to be spot on, and if they weren't, like, oh my gosh, I would have a meltdown because I wanted to be, you know, the number one client and the one that was doing the best. And again, like, wounding, and like I had to be the best and I had to have it perfect and I had to get that validation of look how good I am at this, and look how controlled I can be, and look how small I can make myself, basically.
Yeah. Oh God, I recognize myself so much. And also so many clients as well who are in this mindset too of having to be perfect. And like you said, messaging you at like 10 p.m. on a Saturday night, had they gone over their fats because they had like a little bit of extra ice cream or something like that. And it's so cool to see that you can, like, for those of you guys who are listening and you're like, oh my God, that is me, like just know that you can actually break this, and there you don't have to live a life being controlled by an app and numbers and scales like for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. And while I still believe that, you know, flexible dieting and macro tracking has its place, and you know, it's a great tool to become educated on food, especially for the women that come to me and they're like, I can't touch carbs, like it's just vegetables and chicken and eggs, and like we eat as plain as possible. Like I love introducing them to macro tracking and flexible dieting and showing them, you know, that you actually can eat whatever you basically want to, and the importance of all of the different foods and how they serve your body and how you can be as flexible as possible. But it's so necessary to make sure you're bringing in the approach of let's not get caught down in the specifics. Let's not have that all or nothing mentality. Let's not have that perfectionism. Like I say to my clients all the time, to me, I don't want you to be perfect. I never want you to be perfect. Perfect is not what we're striving for. If I see you being too perfect, I will pull you up on it, because I know what that underlying, like that, what that means underlying, and that's not going to get you sustainable long-term results and keep you in a healthy frame of mind.
No, it's so true. And I think, unfortunately, there's way too many coaches out there who do encourage this. And like, look, I totally get it if you're stepping on stage or you have to, you know, be super, super lean for a like specific event. That's completely different. Like that's not what we're talking about here. This is for the
absolutely not.
Normal population. Most of us who just want to have a happy, healthy lifestyle and being able to eat a bit of cheesecake every now and then.
Yeah, I know. I see all your stories and I'm like, oh my God, your food always looks so good.
Oh, I eat so much yummy food, but I'm telling you, like after being here for so long now, I'm like, oh, I honestly can't wait to like cook some actual vegetables and stuff. And I so annoyed because I went and bought all this food and now my fridge broke, so now I'm gonna have to throw it all out and start again.
That's so frustrating. But that's the thing, though. People, sorry.
No, you go.
I just like, I feel like so many people would watch your stories and like see all your amazing food and think like, and I know that they're thinking to themselves like, if I was around all of that food, I wouldn't be able to stop and I'd have to have it all the time and I wouldn't be able to trust myself like she does. Like I would never be able to eat those donuts or those cookies and things. And it's like the actual opposite. Like when you allow it in, like you like what we like, when you allow it in like we do, and like the food that you eat on your stories and things like that, it does become just a regular everyday thing that you don't have to fixate on, and it's not good or bad. And when you allow it in enough, you don't overeat it, you don't binge on it, you don't need it every day, you can trust yourself around it. And that, like, I think that that's just a beautiful message to show everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so like it kind of goes against what people have been taught. It's like restrict, don't eat that, don't eat. Like if you eat a cookie, you're gonna want the whole thing. But it's actually like, no, you need to actually allow the cookie, and then you're probably not gonna want the whole thing because you've allowed yourself to have it.
Yeah, it's like basically it's how you treat children. Like
Yeah.
you tell them they can't have it, they're going to want it. They're going
Yeah.
to kick and scream until they get it, and they're going to eat it just to spite you because you said that they can't. But as soon as you say have as much as you want, like I literally couldn't care less. Like
Yeah.
I just drove in the car with my niece. She's 2.5, and my sister bought her Happy Meal. She didn't finish it. It's like she had 3 nuggets and didn't finish her chips, and she was done. And she's like, I don't want any more of that. And it's like this is how we all start, and
Mm.
this is how we all have our like attachments to food. We don't care about it when we can have whatever we want, and it just goes to show that your food patterns and behaviors and how you attach to food is all developed as you grow up. And as kids you weren't like that, so it's not who you are. It's not your identity. You didn't start out like that. And I think like children are such a beautiful mirror of actually seeing how we did start out and what's affected us to change.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Like no one is born with a binge eating disorder. No one is born hating their body. These are all things that you guys, like we all, most of us at least, develop as we grow up, and it's because of the things we're around, people that we hang out with, and people say, and people what people don't say. Like and that's normal. So like, don't feel like it's weird that you guys think like this. Like it's just unfortunately just a byproduct of our reality, the culture that we've grown
Absolutely.
up in.
Yeah. And I think, with coaches like yourself and I, the more we can talk about this and the more we can normalize it is so important because it's
Mm.
not spoken about enough. And when it is spoken about, it's spoken about in a way of shame and
Mm.
judgment. And it's just, if people were more open about it, we'd realize that, I've never coached somebody who came to me who said that they had a healthy relationship with food ever. And I've coached like hundreds of women.
Mm.
I can't name one that has started working with me that hasn't had an issue with either binging, stress eating, emotional eating, overeating.
Mm.
You know, nobody's relationship with food is perfect or healthy in a way that they couldn't do some work on it.
Mm.
Um, and I think the more it's spoken about, the message is slowly getting out there.
Yeah, 100%. What was your relationship with food like when you were growing up?
When I was growing up, it's I've I've been thinking about this for a really, really, really long time. My relationship with food got seriously bad when I was 21. And it was extremely, extremely detrimental to my health for 6 years.
Mm.
Until I got help for binge eating disorder at 27. Um, but when I was growing up, I always remember for some reason I just felt like there wasn't ever enough. Like I have this story in my head, and but it was true. It actually happened. Like I'm one of 3 girls, and whenever there was boys around, my mum would feed them more, and she would always load up my dad's plate more than she would give me, and I would always say why are they getting more than me?
Mm.
And so for me, I believe it was like a scarcity thing, and also like why are you favoring them over me kind of situation. And so but that's where I believe my first patterns of disordered eating came in, with being but I deserve just as much as them.
Mm.
And if Taylor listens to this, she'll be laughing because I'm the youngest of 3 daughters who feels like the black sheep, the one that's a little bit different, the one that's a little bit left out, the one that's a little bit not as doesn't need as much love and support and care. So I'm
Yeah.
always I'm here, pay attention to me. And so I think when I wasn't I was fed enough, I wasn't not fed. But
Yeah.
when I saw when I saw if there was men around, they're getting fed more than me, I was but I deserve more food. I need more food. So early years, I believe that's where it came from.
Mm.
And then a very traumatic event happening to me after I gained a lot of weight at 21. I think I gained about 25 kilos, and then I went through a traumatic experience. So that combined with the weight gain set off binge eating extremely
Mm.
from emotional restriction. And then I added in physical restriction. Bang, 6 years of binge eating.
Yeah, it's crazy. So do you feel like you started binging to kind of distract yourself from feeling all the stuff that you went through?
Oh yeah. So basically if you want, so when I was 21, I went to America for 6 months with my boyfriend at the time. We traveled around America and I basically just ate my way across the country. Um, which was incredible at the time, but America's food is not the
Oh my
healthiest.
God, everything there. When I was on holiday, everything was supersized or deep fried and more deep fried stuff and then covered with,
Covered in cheese, covered
yeah,
in bacon,
yeah,
all
yeah,
of the,
maple
it was
syrup. Yeah.
yeah, I loved it,
Oh
but my
yeah, it's great.
body did yeah, I love food. Love food. Um and I put on 25 kilos in the process of that. And
Wow.
I was the biggest that I had ever been. And it was only in the space of 5 months. Like the clothes that I took on the trip
Mm.
didn't fit me by the end of the trip. And I was in a really dark place with my body image and how I felt about myself. As I said, I went with my partner at the time. We'd been together for 2 years. We came home from America and he left me 5 days later. Uh,
No. Oh my
yeah,
God.
yeah. And it was basically like I didn't see it coming. I didn't know that we were in a bad place. I didn't like we weren't fighting. We were happy. We'd just been on the trip of a lifetime that not many 21-year-olds get to do. And he just walked out. So I being a normal girl and having just put on 25 kilos and not having any of her clothes fit her, and also coming home and people looking at me and being like, what the fuck happened to her? Like,
Did they actually
and
say that?
he didn't, yeah, yeah.
Oh, as a
Yeah,
21-year-old, I would have died.
yeah, yeah. And so I was like, I hated how I looked. I was so uncomfortable. I'd never looked like that before. It was extremely obvious to everybody because they hadn't seen me since I left and put on the weight. And I was getting comments. And then the person I thought who was the love of my life got up and left me. So without like an explanation. So I obviously took that to mean that it was just because I was too fat.
Mm.
I was too fat and I was too unworthy and I was not lovable at that weight. Because there wasn't another explanation except the fact that he wasn't attracted to me anymore. And he's never said that. I've never had the confirmation. I don't ever want it. I don't need it. We've moved on, obviously, but I took it to believe that I was too fat and that nobody would love me at that size. And I had to do anything possible if I was ever going to find love again, to get myself as small as possible. So that's when I joined the gym. I hired myself a personal trainer and he taught me all about macro tracking. He explained flexible dieting to me, and unfortunately, I just had the really bad luck of being set up with a personal trainer who set my macros and my calories extremely low. Wasn't listening to me when I was telling him that I was starving, that I was like having uncontrollable binges, that I wasn't sticking to anything on the weekend. I was told the same generic thing: try harder, be more disciplined, don't socialize on the weekends. That's obviously your downfall.
Oh
But
God.
because I was getting amazing results and I was like, I lost all the weight and then some, and I was the smallest I had ever been, he was encouraging it because it was working. And then everybody was validating my weight loss. And then everybody was telling me how good I looked again and how like incredible I had done and how much of a hard worker I was. And then I got down to like a size 6 and was tiny. And then to, solidify my beliefs that I would only be lovable when I was tiny and small, I was getting a lot of male attention. And so I was going to do anything to keep myself as small as I had gotten. And
Mm.
I was restricting to the point where I was like, we're going clean eating, we're going no processed food, even though I was tracking, everything was out of the picture. And then every weekend was just a spiral of a binge. And yeah, I left myself stuck in that situation for 6 years.
Wow. It's so, no, how would I say this? But how you could lose so much weight and then still binge on the weekends, like so
Yep,
much. I can only imagine how little you must have been eating during the week.
100%. To the point where when I went and got help, the person who I hired to help me,
Mm.
their first response, which was very like as a food freedom coach now, I'm like, oh my God, don't say that. He said to me, I don't fully believe that this is what you're suffering with, and this is like that you're being honest with me because of how you look. And I was like, I beg your pardon. He's like, but where are you like putting it? And I was like, that's not an indicator of how bad this situation is.
So he basically said that you lied about your binges.
Yeah. Yeah, because I wasn't big enough to have been saying. I was like, oh mate, if you could see me in my mum's fridge in the middle of the night eating the pavlova like with my hands, like tell me this isn't a problem. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Oh my God. I'm like lost for words right now, because it is like, I know people like this exist, but it's just like when you hear these stories, it's like, oh my God, they actually like, in my head they're like some kind of like fantasy like person in the fantasy land. They don't actually exist, but then you hear these stories and they're like, no, this is actual proof like that they are.
It's actually scary. Yeah. I've had clients, one of my beautiful food freedom clients was extremely restrictive and so low weight and so low body fat that she lost her period, but she was as fit as hell, loved the gym, very, very strong, very muscular. And so when she went to a psychologist to tell them that she was suffering with food issues, they checked her BMI and told her that her loss of her period couldn't be related to her body fat because her BMI was too high. Because she was muscular. Yeah. So a psychologist told her that her eating disorder was not real. And I'm sorry, but when you hear it from a health professional and a doctor and a psychologist, you're like, well, is it all in my head? Like, am I making this?
Of course.
Yeah. And I'm sure you would know so many people dealing with these, like the reason we don't seek help soon enough is because we don't think our problems are big enough.
Yeah, of course.
And when you're told by a medical professional that they're not, it's dangerous.
That is absolutely insane. Well, I mean, if she's listening, like, good on you for actually reaching out to Sarah and like,
she's doing very well.
But it's like, that is absolutely insane to me that someone who is actually gone to university to help people with these kind of issues can say something like that. Like, wow, what is wrong with the industry of, I'm shook. I am so, that is one of the worst things I've ever heard.
It makes you angry. It makes me grow inside.
I just want to go into the doctor now and be like, what is going on here?
You're not helping, you're hindering.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, like you said, like there's so many medical professionals out there who, like, when you're already having these beliefs and when they are giving you this kind of answer, it's just confirming that what you're already fearing, your worst fear, is true. And they're like, okay, no, I don't need help. It is all in my head. I'm not bad enough. But then you go home and you binge. And for most people, it probably gets even worse after that because they have, they're trying to prove something here.
Yeah, well, you feel just so stuck and you feel like you can't get, like, I had truly convinced myself that I would never change. That I would never stop binging. That this was my life for the rest of my life. And I was only in my mid-20s. And that this was just how this was who I was as a person. I had fully decided that I was just stuck with that.
Yeah. Oh God, 100% same. Like, the only reason I got out of mine was because I started CrossFit. And then I stopped getting results. So I started working with a macro tracking coach because I was like, I need to improve my food so I can improve my training. Then my binging stopped, but I just replaced my binge eating with obsession for macro tracking. So
there's always
one
something.
obsession for the next. Which is also very common, like you just swap not eating for binge eating, from binge eating for being super strict, and then being super strict for some other kind of obsession. And finding that balance, that's the tricky part in life. And that's where most, like, basically everyone that I'm helping is struggling.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that just goes to show you it's the behavior, it's not the food.
No.
Like, it's going, until you like actually treat the root cause, the behavior is going to come out somewhere else. It's like you can do the macro tracking and you can eat more food and stuff like that, and that will help, but it's not going to fix it long term.
No, absolutely not. So you mentioned that you obviously struggled for 6 years with this, which is like so long, which is absolutely crazy.
Hmm.
How did you move on from this? Did you get help from like a professional, or did you do it yourself? Like
A
what
little
helped
bit of
you?
both.
Mm.
I'll be 100% honest. I got hypnotized.
Oh, I've
Um,
heard about a lot of people doing that actually.
yeah. So that was my first step in terms of treatment. And it worked brilliantly well. It worked like it was the best thing I ever did.
Mm.
So basically I got to the age of 27. It had been 6 years, and I met my partner that I'm still with to this day, and it was everything that I had dreamed of, and we had a very, very, very happy relationship. We still do, and everything in my life was kind of coming together, and I was very happy, and things were changing, and I could see my future. And as I said, I had decided that this was who I was and this was my future. And when things started to get better and more positive, I just had decided that that's not something that I wanted to bring into my future.
Mm.
And if I could do something about it, then I was going to do something about it. I think it was only recently around then as well that I realized that binge eating was a eating disorder, and it wasn't just like something that was wrong with me.
Mm.
Because I always, everybody knows that you're anorexia and bulimia, and those are the two that are mostly talked about, and that's what we're taught at school, eating disorders. And I had no idea that there was another one or more, multiple more.
Mm. Mm.
Um,
Especially
and
when
and
you're
I had
normal, like,
always told,
sorry,
sorry,
especially when you're like normal weight, I feel like people
yes,
don't really think that you have a problem because you're like at a healthy body weight. Like, oh, you can't be. Is if you're obese, people be like, okay, she
yes,
has a problem with food. But
yes.
most binge eaters are not.
No, absolutely. And I was being like congratulated for my
Mm.
weight loss and how well and how healthy I was, and how much I went to the gym and things like that. People were validating that for me, that that was a good thing.
Mm.
But I was always stuck in that, like, but some people restrict food. It's like some people don't eat at all when I'm not that sick. And like I actually felt shame around myself that I wasn't strong like an anorexic person. And like now I'm like, oh, that brings up so much sadness in me, that I was like, people that have anorexia are so much stronger than me because they can resist food, and I can't resist food. And I was like, wow, you're weak. Like eh, that's very sad to me. And then I thought, I understand that people with bulimia act like this, but then they're also stronger than me because then they purge.
Mm.
And I didn't have that behavior. And I was like, well, you can't bring yourself to do that. So obviously you're not sick enough for help. Um, so that was a big thing that stopped me getting help for a long time, until I realized that this was its own disorder. And it had its own traits, and it came out in different ways, and I could understand that. So the first thing that I got to a point, a breaking point, I would say, and I was like, I need help, and I need help now. And so I booked myself into a hypnotherapy session. And since working with Taylor, and continuing working with Taylor around my like body and food, and continuing that, like, her and I have been working together for quite a long time. I continued to get extra help, and the way I see hypnotherapy is really, really, really cool, as a tool to do all of the work that we do with our clients. They do it subconsciously for you.
Mm.
And it, because when I was in that session, he was like, tell me about your childhood, tell me about your parents, tell me about your work situation, tell me about your relationship, tell me about any trauma you've been through, tell me about how you feel about yourself. And I went through all of my wounding and all of my problems. And then I was hypnotized for, I think, about 45 minutes. And subconsciously, he all that work was done in my brain, and I can't explain it, but it was the most incredible experience I've ever had. Um, then I obviously did have to continue on and do the extra work of the mindset work. I've been with mindset coaches since 2019, continuing to develop my sense of self and personal development, and understanding. I I felt kind of, sort of like, I'm going to say it, I felt a little bit like a fraud that I got hypnotherapy.
Mm.
So I did the extra work to understand what happened in that session, and where all my root causes came from. And I understand my eating disorder which I'm so glad I did do the
Mm.
extra work afterwards, because I understand it. I understand everything that happened to me. I understand where all my wounding came from, where all my patterns and behaviors came from. And then doing my qualifications as an eating disorder practitioner, I understand it even more now. And yeah, that's where my journey to healing started.
Wow, that's so crazy. Like I've heard a lot of people doing hypnotherapy for binge eating, for any kind of addiction, really, like
Yeah.
alcoholics, like smoking, any kind of addiction like that. Is that something that you would ever consider like getting trained to do for people?
Possibly. I mean, I think I fully back it, and I fully believe it, and I fully understand now, knowing how the mindset side of it works and how we work as eating disorder practitioners. It's just an extra tool, and it's just absolutely fantastic. And I think for people who need that instant quick help straight away, why not? Like, absolutely. And it's actually it's mind blowing how it works. I can't
Mm,
tell you how I felt the next day. It was euphoric.
yeah. Do you feel like everything just makes sense? Like, or like you said, just more clear, or like did you ever have a relapse after it?
Yes, I did. I did. I had one relapse afterwards, and I was with the person I went to. I was allowed follow-up sessions if I had a relapse, and I had one. I had a fight with my partner, which obviously strikes the like, I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy, he's going to leave me, and maybe it's because I'm not good enough.
Mm.
Um, we had a fight and I relapsed while I was at work. I remember it very, very clearly. And then I booked another session and I went a few days later, and I was hypnotized again, but in a different way. He used a different method. And I have never binged since, and that was about 4 years ago. Um, and I still definitely got urges. I still definitely got thoughts of it.
Mm.
I still overeat. I still like go for food for comfort. I still, know like I still have feelings for stress eating, emotional eating, and all of those things. But I have never again been in an autopilot dissociation trance like state from for binging. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, first of all, like congratulations for doing that. That's amazing. And I
Thank
think
you.
anyone who recovers from an addiction is just so fucking strong because it's so hard to break. And it doesn't matter if it's alcohol or if it's food or if it's shopping or poker or whatever it is, like it is so hard. So anyone who can get themselves out of there and first or even just ask for help in general, I think that's just
Yeah.
so powerful and so amazing for all those people who are out there fighting every single day to get better. It's so cool. What was I going to ask you? Yeah, but with the hypnotherapy, I think it kind of, I don't really know that much about it, but is it kind of like it kind of stops the immediate like stress of having like the binging or the addiction or whatever it is, and then it kind of allows you to do the root kind of cause the reasons why, get to the reasons why after. Is that how it works?
Yeah, well, basically the way he explained it to me was that that you've got, all of these TVs happening in the back of your head,
Yeah.
that static TV that's like gray and making noise and playing in the background. And obviously that's your subconscious and the
Mm.
stories that you're playing. And his explanation was that he was going in and turning off these TVs and stopping that wounding coming up, and stopping it, it's trauma work. The NLP.
Mm.
It's calming the body and calming the mind of the triggers that are setting you off. So that's, I think, the analogy with the TV is that he was turning off subconsciously those triggers in a hypnotic state. And then when I went back, he was like, "What triggered you? What set you off?" And that was the focus. Like, and he said, like, I turned off like 15 of your TVs, and there was one still going that I missed, and that was like the relationship and the wounding of, the big one, the one that was extremely triggering for me. So that's basically how I understand it, that it's finding those triggers and how they present in your body and your
Mm.
subconscious mind, and working on dissolving those for you.
Wow, so interesting. I definitely want to look more into that kind of stuff. Like, I don't know if I mean, who knows? Who knows? Maybe both of us in a few years, maybe we'll both be.
I know, right? If I find a good course, we can do it together.
Yeah. You never know. You never know. Like, I feel like just like when you started off coaching, like I never thought I would be doing what I'm doing now. Like, I thought my thing was weight loss, training CrossFit athletes. That was like my path. So it's so interesting. Like, did you ever think that you would kind of transition into this? Like, was that ever your goal?
Oh, absolutely not. Like I was like macro tracking queen. I
Yeah.
was like, I branded myself the macro tracking queen. Like, if you want to learn macro tracking, if you want to learn flexible dieting, I will tell you everything that there is to know. I will teach you every single like important piece of information, and I will teach you how to be an absolute wizard at it. And that was my thing. Like,
Yeah.
macro tracking was my whole world. And then
Yeah.
when
So
I started getting into it and meeting these women, I was like, you need so much more than this. Like,
mm,
and I was realizing that they were so much like me, and they had so much traits like me, and so many of the behaviors like me. And it was kind of sending off these like red flags in my brain, being like, you can see the road these women are going down, and if you only show them macro tracking, like
mm,
you're playing with fire. And that's not the person I wanted to be.
mm,
And I've always looked at coaching as like, be the coach you needed 5 years ago, be
mm,
the person that you needed support from. Like, you've been through this journey, you've like suffered, you've grown, you've been successful, you've come out the other side, you've healed, you've done the work, you understand it. So make sure that like, I truly believe that if I had somebody else teach me macro tracking and the personal trainer that I had teach me, my story would be very, very different through my whole 20s.
mm,
And I was like, I just need to be the coach that I didn't get. I need to make sure that the people who were like me and uncomfortable and hated their bodies and are unhappy, that they get a coach that cares, that they get a coach that listens, that they get a coach that, wants them to be healthy and have a good relationship with food. And did I think that that would lead me to like being a food freedom eating disorder practitioner? Not in my wildest dreams, but like, it's one of my most proudest achievements that I can now get to transition into that.
yes, I
The
love that.
world doesn't need another macro queen. There's plenty.
Yeah, no, there's definitely funny. But it's funny when you start off because I even from the start, I feel like so many clients like they would obviously be the food thing. It would be like, how do I hit these macros? Yada yada. And then but then half of the check-in would be like stuff that they're struggling with, like their mental health, like their
Yep.
relationships and stuff. So I don't know, I guess for people like us, maybe it just becomes more natural to us because we have such a background in this. But it just for me, it's always been like, how can you just be a food coach? Because every
Mm-hmm.
check-in that I've ever done, unless it's with a guy who'd had absolutely no unhealthy relationships with food, he was just like, I'm just going to eat exactly what you told me. It's fine. I don't care. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like that. Every other
The
client,
dream.
yeah, yeah, just like do this. Okay, no questions asked.
Yeah. Yeah.
But every other client's always been like, oh, I overate, or I binged, or I was sad, so I ate more food, or I was stressed, so I ate, or I didn't eat because I felt guilty and stuff like that. So it's just for me, it's just so weird to think that someone would ever do a check-in and not talk about
Yeah.
those kind of things.
Yeah. I don't understand it, honestly. I don't know how it's done, and I can understand completely. And that's why I did transition, because I
Yeah.
was like, I'm not helping you enough, just
Mm.
talking about food and nutrition. And, these women, they know what to do. They're not
Yeah.
silly.
Everyone
They,
knows how to eat
yeah,
healthy. Like
yeah,
everyone knows that broccoli is low in calories and high in nutrients, and a donut is not.
yeah, exactly. Like, and you can Google this stuff,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
if they're coming to work with you, there's deeper lying issues going
Mm,
on, and there's a reason why something hasn't worked for them yet.
mm,
But yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I fully believe that like that's why we see so many yo-yo dieting and so much diet culture coming in, because there are a lot of coaches out there who are just doing the bare minimum. Um, and for the very rare people, like you said, who have fine relationships with food, that's great that everybody has, every pot has a lid. But like I don't I, that's why I'll never run a challenge. Like, that's why I'll never run an angry challenge. That's why
mm,
I'll always, have proper programs where we can go deep, where I can get to know you. Like my clients are my best friends. Like
Yeah.
I'm always going to be that coach. Like I want to know you. I want to know. I will remember your name. I'll remember your dog's name. I remember your partner's name. I know what you do for work. I know how many kids you have. I know what you're doing on the weekend. I know every fucking thing about you. And I like fucking care about how you feel and how hard your life is. And I just want to help. And I don't fucking care what you had for dinner. Like,
Yeah, literally.
I don't want to teach you how to create a recipe in my fitness pal. I want to know about you.
Yeah. Oh, 100%, 100%. For someone who, like, if they're listening to this and they're like, oh, like maybe I should, like maybe I do have problems. Like, is there any like red flags that someone should look out for?
Yeah, well, there's plenty. I think, it can be as basic as, like that streak on my fitness pal. I can't lose my streak on my fitness pal. I have to log everything. Being afraid to not guesstimate food, being afraid to having to weigh all of your food, being afraid to eat at restaurants. I think the flag of like trying to avoid social situations, being anxious around going out to restaurants, being invited to parties, um, the like mentality of let's just get back into it on Monday. On Monday, I'm going to be really, really good again. I'm going to make sure that I eat really well. I'm going to stick to it this time. I'm going to have more willpower. I'm going to have more discipline. And I think just, the red flag of your go-to being food. Like I'm definitely not one of those coaches that's like, you're using food as a coping mechanism and you shouldn't be. I love food for comfort. Like food is comfort, food is joy, food is love, food is pleasure. And the more you realize that and accept that, the better you'll do. But like if you're turning to, having to buy chocolate on the way home because life is stressful and life is hard, that's a red flag. Like if you know that it's like binge eating took 6 years of my life when I was like in the prime of my life. When your food is consuming you to the point where you're not living life to the fullest, like that's when you need to say this isn't serving me. And I want, I don't want to lose 50% of my life to be 5% smaller. I never want to do that again.
Yeah, I love that so much. Well, Sarah, it's been absolute pleasure to talk to you, and I feel like we could have gone on for hours because you're just so civilized. Like, yes, I agree. Yes, I agree. But if
I know,
people
yeah,
wanna, if people wanna work with you, like we'll obviously link your Instagram below. But are you taking on new clients? Like, do you wanna plug a new project that you have going on? Give yourself a good plug.
Sure, let's do that. Yes, my Instagram is that Sarah Sullivan. And I do work one-on-one with people in my program called Strong Self. It is mindset and food freedom. So working one-on-one to help your mindset and heal your relationship with food. But I also have an 8-week program coming up, which is everything to do with binge eating, overeating, emotional eating, your relationship to food, your food behaviors, patterns, and the root cause of them. That is called Unfuck Your Food, and it is starting on March 21st.
Beautiful. That sounds amazing. And I'm sure you'll get it completely sold out because, God, I figured you're amazing. And it's been, yeah, guys, you need to check her Instagram. It's so helpful.
Thank you so much. This has been so fun.
Thanks, guys, so much for listening. And as usual, please remember to take a screenshot of the podcast, tag myself, tag Sarah, tag Women's Fitness Academy. Tell us what you thought. Tell us what you took out of it, what was helpful. And make sure you do check out Sarah's page as well. And thank you again, Sarah, for jumping on. And everyone, have a beautiful day.